Hey, good Tuesday morning, everybody. Welcome into the Volquest podcast. I am Eric Kane, joined by Rob Lewis, Brent Hubbs, and Grant Ramey. As always, a big thank you to our friends over at Exterior Home Solutions for being the proud presenting sponsor of the Volquest podcast. Been local, and they've been trusted since 1999. If you have a need for roofing, siding, shingles, windows, whatever the case may be, contact Exterior Home Solutions today. That phone number for a free estimate is 865-524-5888. Or you can visit them online at exteriorhomesolutions.com. I wanted to get into a subject here with the holiday, the 4th of July coming up later this week. Firework moments from Tennessee athletics over the past academic year. And of course, it's fitting as well that the new academic year started on Monday of this week with July the 1st. But I want to look back to 2023, 2024 and talk and discuss some of the bigger moments, the bigger plays, some of the best players from this past year. And of course, we're writing a lot about that over at volquest.com. But before we jump into that, Brent Hubbs, one of the biggest topics, of course, right now around the around campus and, of course, around the General's quarters is that of an extension of Tony Vitello. Sounds like something's going to be done here in the not-too-distant future, right?
Yeah, I mean, I think there's a chance that it's done this week. Obviously, they're not going to release it on July 4th, but I think there's a chance that it could come as early as today, could come on Wednesday. I think the bottom line is that the commitment Tennessee's making to baseball is only continuing. Tony Vitello deserves everything that he's getting. He just won a national championship. Grant Ramey, when another school makes a run at you, that always helps in your leverage case. And we saw that story, and you wrote about that story over the weekend with Texas A&M trying to make a run at Tony Vitello. I don't think Tony was ever going there, but as Kendall Rogers said, that they made a hard run, and Tennessee is not. I mean, listen, Danny White can't let Tony Vitello go anywhere.
No, and it's not only a run, a very furious run, I think was the quote, which means a boatload of money would be how I translate that, offering him the world, basically. With Tony, though, at this point, he's getting a new stadium, basically. It's going to look like a brand new stadium. He's going to be one of the highest paid coaches in the sport, you would assume. Like, what's going to lure him away from Tennessee at this point? He won a title, and he's just getting started, it feels like. I mean, he just finished his 7th year. It's not like he's been here for a while and it's felt almost like complacency or something. No, they've just kept building and kept going up. And now you got a championship. Now you've got a new stadium. Now you got, basically everything he's asked for, he's been given to this point. And y'all are talking about a new contract, but that's going to be as much money as probably anybody in the country, you would assume. So I don't know at this point. I think even Kendall Rogers might have wrote this himself. Like he might see himself, he might see Vitello at this point finishing his career at Tennessee. And it feels like, I don't know what would lure him away from this job at this point.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, with the new stadium and the financial commitment that Tennessee's making, and obviously Tony's going to get paid, but I think when you see this contract, I know one of the things throughout the last 3 months of negotiating has been about support staff funds and salary pool for his assistant coaches. And I think that has always been something that was important to Tony Vitello, and he's going to make sure that is taken care of. And I believe it will be in this contract whenever it gets finalized. And again, we think that's coming this week. I think the other question about Tony Vitello is how long does that candle burn as bright and as hard as it's burned for the last 7 years? I mean, he talked about it a little bit, Eric, afterwards, where he gave props to other coaches in the league and kind of joked, hey, I know they don't like me, but I got great respect for them. And I really got great respect for those guys who have families. And that's, to me, spoke of the grind year-round that baseball is. And Tennessee baseball has been Tony Vitello's life for 7 years. Can you continue to go at the pace that he's gone at for the last 7 years? And if so, how long does he want to do that? I mean, I'm not saying he's going to retire tomorrow, but is he a guy who's going to be coaching when, like Mike Martin was at Florida State when he was in his mid-60s, or is Tony Vitello going to be, on a tropical island somewhere at that point saying, it was a good run, I appreciate it. That's why I don't know that Tony Vitello's got any interest in going anywhere else and trying to build anything, particularly with everything Tennessee's doing for him.
Yeah, I mean, time will tell in that, right? I mean, no one has the answer to that. What new and innovative things are changing the landscape in college athletics 10 years from now? You're going through a lot of change right now. What if there's more and more and more change 10 years from now? How do you adapt to that? Luke Lipsius was joking around on one of our final episodes of The Porch, and he said, hey, Tony always told us that he would never get a girlfriend until Tennessee won a national championship. And he said it kind of laughing and everything, but I mean, what happens if you start a family at some point? Yeah, it's you can't be as relentless as your younger self was on the recruiting trail or whatever. So I don't know. I mean, nobody has the answer to that, but what we do know right now is the passion runs hot, and obviously the commitment's there. Commitment's always going to be there, but he's going to be compensated for it. And there's a reason, Brent, as you've written about in recent weeks, there's a reason Tennessee went in the direction of a guy like Tony Vitello. Young, fiery, dedicated, and that investment has turned twofold, and they won a national championship.
Well, every other option they had tried didn't work. I mean, you know what I mean? It was one of those deals where that was kind of what the trend was in baseball. I get that. But, I mean, and I'll say this too, and I applaud Dave Serrano. He was out in Omaha. His son Parker's obviously on staff, and he was out there and spoke highly, obviously, of everything that Tony has done. And I think Dave has been gracious, and not many times do you get fired and you still have the passion and the love for the school that you worked at. And Dave certainly has that. I do think that there were some things going in the right direction for Tony when he got here, which is kind of bizarre to say because they weren't winning anything. But I think there were some players. I think they had cleaned up. I think Dave had cleaned up a lot of the mess. He had missed out on some in-state guys for sure, and there were some other things that it didn't work. But my point in the hiring of Tony Vitello, Rob, is that, I mean, there was on paper, there was never a bigger home run hire than Dave Serrano. It made 1,000% sense for Dave Serrano to come to Tennessee and win big, and it didn't work. And so when that one doesn't work, you're up for trying anything. And enough people recommended to John Curry this Tony Vitello guy, and it's obviously been a huge home run.
Yeah, and you talk about Serrano. I mean, I remember the time. I mean, it wasn't like baseball was anywhere close to being on the radar, but people that cared about it, it might have been a small group, but they were passionate. And I mean, you talk about universal support for Dave at that time that was made. I mean, it was very much you said home run hire. I mean, it was a feel good hire too. I mean, it was people that it made people on campus feel good. They're listening to us. Not people on campus, people that cared about baseball. I mean, felt that people on campus were listening to them. And, I think one of the odd things about Tony and really, Rick to a certain extent too, Hubbard, is that they have, made it through multiple administrations. I mean, they're not working for people that hired him anymore, but yet it's been pretty seamless, or at least with this one, it's been really seamless. And I don't know how often you see that at this level of athletics where you get, new people coming in and cases, where there could be, some eggs being broken in the kitchen with this, this kind of high level, jobs and egos. And man, Tony and Rick have, not only flourished. I mean, I think, where they are with Danny and Dondi, and they both talk about it all the time. It's an unusual thing. And, Tennessee fans are definitely reaping the benefits of an athletic department that is, rowing in the same direction, to use an overused cliche.
Yeah, no doubt. And I think you got to give both Rick and Tony credit. They were not bulls. I don't think they've ever been a bull in a china shop, guys, with the new administration when they come in, right? Like, and listen, I love Rod Delmonico, and I understand where Rod Delmonico was years ago, but everything with Rod Delmonico was a street fight with administration. I mean, part of it was they didn't understand baseball. They weren't really committed to baseball. They didn't get the importance of baseball at that point. And baseball, college baseball in the mid-'90s was at a very, very different place than it is right now. But Rod Delmonico was standing on the table screaming for everything. A new speaker system, right? I mean, even the smallest things. It was basically a fist fight for everything. And I think Tony's just went and built his program. And has went and got involved in the community grant and has just said, hey, if we do our part, the rest of it will come. And he's clearly done his part, and it's here. It's here with a national championship. It's here with a new stadium. And now it's going to be here with a huge contract.
I mean, Rob, correct me if I'm wrong. I feel like Rick and maybe Tony is in this way too, where they just want to have their program and run it and don't worry about anything else. Like
100%.
Like, just let me handle my business, and everybody's going to be fine. And I mean, Rick, you think about it, he's on his fourth Tennessee athletic director, because Dave hired him. John Curry was here, Philip Fulmer's here, and now Danny White's here, and he's been here 9 seasons now. I think this last one was his 9th, and they've won pretty consistently ever since year 2, year 3. And it's almost been like, and they've had some associate athletic directors that have kind of been, associated with basketball that they didn't want to lose, and that some of those guys have left, John Gilbert and other guys like that. But they want to just build their program, run their program, and just kind of be left on their own. And they're going to handle their business. You don't worry about them. Go worry about something else. I think it's worked for Rick. And if Tony's anything like that, man, I would leave him alone and let him run his own program as much as I could.
I think it's made Danny White's job easier. I mean, look, it's not been perfect. There have been times where I'm sure Danny White's had, an issue or two he's had to deal with those guys. That's part of it. But I don't think Danny White's sleeping with one eye open at night, wondering about this, that, or the other. I think he's going to sleep going, I've got people in the sports, handling their sports, that are beyond committed to making their program the best it can be. There's no complacency with anybody I have as a head coach in any of my sports at this point. And Eric, I don't know that you can say that for a lot of programs around the country, where an AD goes, you know what? That my head coach is more committed than he's ever been to making his program the best it can be. And those two guys in that picture right there, very different in age, very different in styles, very different in a lot of things. One common thing, competitive as hell, and they want to win. And they want their program to succeed the right way. And both of them are having great success right now.
Yeah, I mean, throw Josh Heupel in the mix there. I mean, I know Josh Heupel hasn't won to this point to the magnitude of these other two, and of course Rick Barnes and Tony Vitello. But somebody was asking about it on the board last night. We were talking about it. Like, you just can't fake the joy, the happiness, the smiles with those three on the post-game field down there after they won it all. I mean, Tony's all smiles because he just won a national championship. Rick Barnes and Josh Heupel are there. I mean, they were thrilled. I mean, I'm not going to try to say that those guys are the 3 best friends that anyone could ever have, but I mean, they're happy for each other. They support one another. I mean, Tony Vitello goes and wears the Kai Ziegler jersey and sits courtside at basketball games. Josh Heupel goes and takes his recruits to baseball games. Rick Barnes he's on the field pregame for football games. I mean, they support one another. They're happy with one another. And the question on the board was, it feels like this doesn't happen at every school around the country. Like, take Texas A&M, for example. Was Elko down there? Was the other, coaches down there supporting it? And maybe they were. And if Texas A&M won, maybe we saw similar things on the field post-game from other, head coaches in that athletic department. Maybe so, I don't know. But it just looks like it's a great work environment at Tennessee because a lot of the reasons you guys already mentioned. Danny White might not have hired these guys, at least all of them, but he lets them work. Remember Tony Vitello after the Evansville, Game 3 went on that super rant, and during that super rant he said, "Hey, I have a boss. I've got an AD and university president and all that, but I'm my own boss. They let me do what I want to do, and we go to work every single day." And I think that's a positive work environment, created by Danny White. They enjoy working. They are passionate. They're good at what they do, and you're seeing the fruits of that labor right now. So I don't know. I thought that was interesting. I guess it was Sunday, kind of a conversation on the board that what you're seeing here, you might not. It's just not that common, Rob. At least it doesn't feel like it's that common amongst the cohesiveness of these coaches.
For sure. And I don't mean to be all kumbaya, but those guys really are buddies. I mean, it's not. I mean, they're I'm not saying they hang out and play a lot of golf together, but if they're on a plane ride together going to Destin, and it's not. I would imagine there are not many uncomfortable silences, to say the least, or going on the Big Orange Caravan. But it made me think. Can you imagine, say Donnie Tyndall, Butch, and Todd Raleigh, in a van going around the state?
I mean, it's different, and I do think Eric touched on something. When I sat down with Dondi Plowman a year or so ago, however long it's been now, I can't even remember. I asked her straight up, about her leadership skills, and she said, "You know what? I get out of the way. I support. If I have to step in, I'll step in, but I'm not going to meddle in anybody's business. I hired Danny White to manage the athletic department." and he can come to me if he's got a problem, but I'm not gonna get in his business every day. And Danny White's told me on the record he's taken that notion from her and tried to incorporate more and more into his leadership style as an athletics director. Let your people go to work for you. And that's what Rob just did. He just went to work for somebody. He just left. Anyway, there he is.
There he is.
But let him go work. And I think that stands out. And I think that's part of why we're having success. I know we've sort of said the same thing here for several minutes. I guess kind of all giving our opinion. It's all the same in a lot of ways. But I do think there's a freedom in the athletic department right now for individual coaches to go about their business in their style and their way, to put their thumbprint completely on their program, and nobody's stepping in telling them how to do those things. Maybe Tony has stepped in and told Rick Barnes to get dark mode jerseys for his uniform, but outside of that, I don't know that there's much anybody's telling him what to do. But that's the biggest story of the weekend, or the last few days, is the fact that Rick Barnes has acknowledged Grant Ramey they might be wearing an alternative uniform in basketball.
So he said it's in the works. He said Nike's made one up, or whatever that process is like, and he said he wants it all black. The way he described it, he was on Josh and Swain last week. The way he described it was a lot like that baseball jersey where it's all black and it just says Vols across the chest. And Eric, to Schlossnagel's credit, he had a suite in Omaha that was Rodney Terry and Steve Sarkisian and Chris Del Conte, Matthew McConaughey. He just asked ESPN.
All right.
They just didn't get a chance to celebrate.
Rob, are you stunned by an alternative uniform in basketball? I'm surprised.
Not stunned. I mean, they've worn the grays before. I'm not. I mean, he. That's not a hill that he would die on. I mean, I would say he would. That would certainly not be his idea. But when other people would, present it to him, I mean, Grant, he wouldn't. He just wouldn't be that interested in making an argument. He'd rather go,
They had those.
Much rather spend his energy on something else.
Right. They had those smoky grays for a blink of an eye in like year 2 or year 3, maybe year 2. And they got whipped at home wearing them against South Carolina. And Rick swore them off from there. Like, if y'all can't play better than that, we're never wearing them again. And we've never seen them again. But they introduced that kind of baseball-like off-white uniform with the Vol script in 2021, I think. And they've worn that a ton. I mean, they've worn that in a lot of NCAA tournament games the last couple of years. So I don't think they're opposed to it at all. And whatever the kids like, man, give it to them.
In terms of the black jerseys for baseball, a couple of reasons why they wear them so much. Number one, it's cool. Number two, it's literally cool. It's the lightest jersey that they have. So it's 100 degrees in Omaha, and you're like, why are they wearing black? It's the lightest jersey that they have. And number three is superstition. They wore black a ton in postseason last year. They wore black a ton in the College World Series this past year. Think about the games that I can't remember specifically every single game, but I do know the 2 games they wore their traditional whites. You had to battle to walk off a winner 12-11, which was good, but you had to battle. And then the other one you lost in game 1 of the final. So my point is superstition. It feels good because it's a light jersey and it looks good. And that's why Tennessee baseball loves wearing the black jerseys, even if it's 100 degrees.
I think superstition's at the top of that list. I think that's a pretty superstitious program. I think, and maybe superstition's not the proper way to say it, but pretty regimented in their routine. If it works, they're not gonna alter wherever they're going.
Let me put it this way: when they're on the road, I'm not saying Omaha because the team hotel was literally just right up from at least the one they stayed in this year. But say they're in Lexington, say they're in Gainesville, say they're wherever around the SEC. If you lose on a Friday night, game 1 of the series, going to the ballpark on Saturday, you are taking a different route. You are taking a different way to the ballpark because you do not want to fall in the same steps that you did the day before when you lost. That is true. It happens every year. That's Tony Vitello. That's baseball for you.
That is baseball in a nutshell. That totally sums up baseball.
All right, we're going to get into some firework moments, some firework plays as we get ready to celebrate the 4th of July later this week. But a lot of great moments, obviously. We've written a ton. We're going to continue to write about it as the week goes on. We're going to discuss it here when we return on the Volquest podcast. But first, a proud word from our sponsors, Exterior Home Solutions.
Severe weather can strike at any time in East Tennessee, and Mother Nature can do severe damage to the first and most important line of defense that you and your family have against Mother Nature, and that is your roof. Whenever she strikes, make sure that you call the people that I call. Make sure you trust the people that I trust, and that's my friends at Exterior Home Solutions, because they're more than friends, they're truly family.
That phone number is 865-524-5888. ExteriorHomeSolutions.com. They're local and trusted since 1999. That is Exterior Home Solutions. All right, so we're going to be writing about it a lot this week. We've already written about it a little bit with Brent's top 5 games from the Big Three this past weekend. But you're going to see a lot of fireworks this week because of the 4th of July, and there was a lot of firework moments for Tennessee athletics this past year. Moments, plays, performances from players, kind of all around the conversation here we'll kind of discuss. But since we're discussing baseball, we'll continue on there. We've talked about it ad nauseum, Brent, but Hunter Ensley's performance in the College World Series, running into the wall, and then, of course, the slide, if you will, that turned out to be the game-winning run against Texas A&M in Game 3 of the College World Series Finals. Those two plays were the biggest in Tennessee's championship run in Omaha, and I don't think it's even close. Sure, Christian Moore had a cycle. Kavaris Tears had some good catches. Dylan Dreiling was the MVP. Those two plays by Hunter Ensley, specifically the slide, I mean, that turned out to be the biggest, and that was certainly worthy of some fireworks.
Well, no doubt the slide was a great play. I would throw in Dylan Dreiling's home run to give Tennessee the lead
Game
two.
Yeah,
because Tennessee had not done anything to that point. And you're just sitting there going, okay, can they get a hit, and so you're sitting there going, all right, how can they get back to the top of the lineup before the end of the game to get the big guns back there? And then Dylan says, hey, I'll just take care of it myself. So to me, while it wasn't a Sports Center highlight type play from a fireworks standpoint, I've got to put that home run in there because that's the home run that sent you to Game 3. And I think all of us felt like when Tennessee got to Game 3, Tennessee was going to win the College World Series. I thought if A&M was going to beat them, they had to sweep them. They had to do it in Game 2. Otherwise, I didn't think that group of veterans with Seacrest and Cannell, and I just thought Tennessee would will themselves in Game 3 to a win. So I would put Dylan Dreiling's hit in there, although it wasn't video Sports Center top 10 worthy, but I would put Dreiling's hit in there as probably my biggest firework, with Ensley 1B on the slide.
Yeah, I mean, it's hard to argue against that. Tennessee did not hold a lead in the finals round until that happened. I just remember sitting there during that game, and Tennessee was losing 1-0 the entire game, and I'm like, Tennessee's like 0 for 8 with runners in scoring position, 1 for 6, whatever it was. I'm just like, eventually, someone's going to run into one here. And 7th inning, like clockwork, guy on base, it was a 2-run home run. Here comes Dylan Dreiling. So that was a huge play. Gave Tennessee its first lead of the finals round. Ensley, Dylan Dreiling, of course, what he did the whole weekend long in Omaha with all the 2-run home runs in the 7th inning, the walk-off hit. Christian Moore, his cycle, it was only done one other time ever in College World Series history. And really, Grant, Christian Moore overall, I mean, you sit back here and look at it, the dude, I mean, you're having publications put him as a first-team All-American as a designated hitter because they got to find a spot for him, because you got a Golden Spikes Award finalist there as a second baseman, but you can't leave Christian Moore off because he had truly one of the greatest seasons in quite some time. You think of Charlie Condon and Jack Caglione. I mean, Christian Moore, Triple Crown Award winner in SEC play, 34 home runs, 74 RBI, hitting leadoff. What he did all year long, not just in Omaha, but all year long, was truly a firework type season. And I mean, he's going to be remembered forever in Tennessee baseball history. That's for sure.
When the career home run record is not that all different than your single season total, that's pretty absurd. I mean, I know this was an absurd team home run wise, top to bottom in terms of what they did, but Christian Moore hitting the number he did, I don't even know what the final number was there. If you'd have to jog my 34.
Yep.
And his cycle, specifically Game 1, because Game 1 is so big in Omaha, and Tennessee hadn't won there in Game 1. They had only done it one time. It was that 95 team. that felt like such a huge hurdle that they were going to have to get over. And for, before the bottom of the ninth, it felt like the last 2 hours you were just waiting for the game to end because it felt like Tennessee was going to get beat and go to the consolation bracket. But Christian Morsako, it felt like so many of those hits were keeping Tennessee kind of in the discussion, in the conversation, kind of keeping that game within reach, even though it felt like it was going to take a miracle, which it basically did in the bottom of the ninth with the way that the things played out. So not only the second cycle in history, but the way it played out, because it propels you in game one. It helps you stay around so you can win it in the bottom of the ninth. And if you don't win that one in the bottom of the ninth, you probably don't leave Omaha with the trophy because it's so hard to come out of that consolation bracket.
Yeah, I cannot, Rob, go into more detail about how at the time, and it was short-lived, it was only a couple of days, but that win over Florida State to open play in Omaha was the best game, the best win ever in Tennessee baseball history. That, of course, until Game 3 of the finals when they won the national championship. Had a little bit of everything. Couldn't pitch. Nate Snead came on, settled the waters, but Tennessee just kept chipping away. That game, as Grant mentioned, regional play is meant to, if you lose the first game, I mean, you're toast. Like, it is so incredibly difficult to climb out of that regional and move on to the super. That was huge, and that was obviously the best win in Tennessee history up to that point.
Oh yeah, I mean, for me, it's game one in Omaha. Even maybe it's probably silly to say, even with what happened in the final weekend. I just, that first night against Florida State, to do what they did, the way they did it, just stamped. It's kind of just validated everything about him all season long, and just really. To me, stamped them as the favorite. I mean, not that they weren't the favorite going in, but it was like, hey, everything up to this point is, it's legit. Here, see it for yourself on the biggest stage they've been on. So I just thought that was, incredibly impressive. Just kind of storybook stuff. To quote Hubbard's phrase, it was Sports Center, highlight, top 10 material. That the way they closed game one against Florida State for the reasons you said, Eric. I mean, it's just been such a struggle. I mean, there was no reason to really see it coming, and it just, boom, with their backs to the wall. I mean, they came through with everything on the line, and on, like I said, on the biggest stage. I mean, it was terribly impressive to me.
It literally was. I don't know what number it was, but Dylan Drowling's walk-off single was one of the top plays that night. I remember that. A couple other ones before we shift gears here. Again, it's like last year, you can point to the exact moment that the season turned, right? It's Vanderbilt, game one. Tennessee's 5-10 in conference play. You had the solo home runs in the ninth inning from Dreiling and Tears to tie the game. Merritt comes in, has an outfield assist to save a run. Later on, in I think the 10th inning, Griffin Merritt walks it off to beat Vanderbilt. You point, say that's when it all changed. That's the turning point. This year, you didn't necessarily have a turning point because wire to wire, Tennessee was just really good. I mean, Tennessee evolved and got better, but 5 players to have 20-plus home runs. That's never happened in NCAA baseball history. That is certainly a bunch of fireworks. 3 home runs away from tying the national home run record of 187. Just 3 away. I mean, incredible stuff. Did you guys remember? I'm sure you knew it at one point, but did you remember that Tennessee turned a triple play this season? All the way back, game 2 of the season at Globe Life Field, Tennessee turned a triple play. That's only happened at least one other time in program history. And, of course, we talked to nauseam about Xander Seacrest, and more so than the last month of the season, which was just so phenomenal. Let's not forget Xander Seacrest's coming out party when he just set the Georgia Bulldogs down. He went, at a time, 6 innings. I don't remember the specific numbers, but Georgia's offense is one of the best in the country, and Xander Seacrest shut him down. And I remember sitting there thinking, it was the day Tennessee played in the Elite Eight, so not a lot of people were watching it. But I remember sitting there saying, okay, if Xander Seacrest can do this to this offense, you might have something there in Xander Seacrest. So that's kind of a turning point a little bit for me. So tons of firework moments, obviously, for a national championship winning Tennessee baseball program. Unless anybody else has anything other on baseball, I'd like to turn it to football right now. Brent Hubbs, 8-4, the regular season record. Of course, it ended on a high note with the Citrus Bowl win. You've written about that with Nico coming in there against Iowa. That was a lot of good things. But what are some other firework moments throughout the football season from this past year, Tennessee football?
I think that Kamal Haddon's pick 6 against Spencer Rattler, which was kind of an ironic moment given the everything that had happened the year before, and Haddon's mouth the year before at at South Carolina in that blowout loss. But that one was a huge moment. D. Williams punt return for a touchdown against Texas A&M because Josh Heupel played football the old school way there. They played field position. It worked to perfection. That's kind of not what they do. I wrote about it afterwards, Grant, that maybe Josh had kind of learned and adapted to some things a little bit in the SEC. A couple of weeks later, he went to Alabama and went for it twice on his side of the field that didn't work out. So maybe there was a little bit of a lesson that
maybe not.
But that was a tough, awful day offensively. They turned it over in the red zone, and they played defensive football, and it worked to perfection. The kicking game, pinned A&M back, and then obviously D. Williams made something happen after the defense got the job done. So those were two highlight moments for me. I think Jalen Wright, had a couple of different runs. Rob, that opening run against Georgia, even though you knew what was probably coming, that was a highlight moment for him that I thought would really help him in his draft stock more than it did. But that was a hello, this guy's legit type deal because he completely ran away from a national championship caliber defense. And, it was for naught, but that was a highlight firework moment for sure.
Yeah, I mean, that run for the plays you mentioned, I mean, I don't have anything to add to that. And I don't know that there's just one moment, but just James Pierce. I mean, the body of work that you saw. I mean, by October, it was apparent Tennessee had something special on their hands there. I mean, I would throw him out there as, and again, I don't know if there's just one play you point to, but after 6 weeks, you knew Tennessee had a special one on their hands there. And then I just don't know that you can say enough about Nico in the bowl game and what that meant for the hope leading up to next year. I mean, the faith from fans that, hey, this, Tennessee was 8-4. It felt like you maybe took a step back, but look what's coming. This thing really is on an upward trajectory. Hubbard's at sacrilegious. I mean, I would almost compare it to, what Peyton did in the Gator Bowl that year, coming off what might have been an 8-4 season.
Yeah,
maybe
it was. I mean, the difference
how it made people feel about what was coming down the pike.
Yeah, I think the one difference that I would put in there is the body of work was greater in 94.
Oh yeah, for sure, 100%.
Played that whole month. Now he had so much help around him, but yeah, I mean, it certainly created the hype and the buzz that, hey, they've got a guy here for a couple of years that's going to be a legit dude, and that's where Tennessee fans are with Nico right now for sure. So I do think there's some similarities in that one. But back to Pierce. The pick six is a play that everybody's going to talk about. And, the Virginia game, he got off the ball really fast and made a couple plays. He made a play in the A&M game that for me, if I'm an NFL scout, that's the play that I'm looking at James Pierce totally different, that he's a guy who can do more. He chased and followed basically a crossing pattern and made a tackle essentially at the line of scrimmage on one of A&M's speed receivers. That's just a play you're not supposed to make at 250 pounds. It was a freak play. I mean, it's an NFL, it's one that the scouts put on the board and go, okay, maybe this guy's he's far from a one-trick pony as a pass rusher. That's the one that jumps out. That's a play that jumps out to me. Although it goes unnoticed, but that was one where I said, okay, James Pierce is different because of the play he made in that game against that receiver in that setting. What he was asked to do there was really tough, and he made a great play.
Y'all have failed to mention the firework game, November 4th. Does that date ring any bells? Jim Mora's mighty UConn Huskies came to Knoxville for homecoming. And this is a noon game. Nobody's paying attention to it because it's UConn and Tennessee, and UConn's awful. They're getting in beefs with Tennessee on the field at 9 a.m. for whatever reason. Like, they take exception to where Tennessee's warming up, and there's on-field drama. There's pregame on-field drama between these two teams for a homecoming game in November, the last thing you'd expect. And then let me just read off the box score here off my phone, if you'll excuse me for a second. Jalen Wright, 82-yard touchdown run. 7-0, time of possession, 28 seconds. Ramel Keaton, 60-yard pass from Joe Milton. 4 plays, 77 yards, time possession, 61 seconds. Squirrel White, 83-yard touchdown from Joe Milton. I have no recollection of that play, but apparently it happened. Time of possession, 47 seconds. And to go full circle back to Hubbs' defense, Tennessee defense standing out against A&M. Tyler Barron, 24-yard fumble recovery for the first touchdown, 35-3.
Easily.
Jalen McCullough, 30-yard interception, touchdown, pick six, 42-3. Aaron Beasley, 39-yard, and then the 39-yard pick six Beasley, and then the blow-by handshake from Jim Mora, who got beat 59-3, and said he was proud of his team because they were classy before the game, during the game, and after the game. The most firework, drama-laden homecoming game that you never saw coming.
I forgot all about that game. You just don't think about Tennessee and UConn, obviously.
No.
Another game that nobody thinks about, that's a really good point, kind of in the same vein here, Grant, is Joe Milton against Vanderbilt. We remember here, only 4 players ever in Tennessee football history have been responsible for 6 or more touchdowns in a game. Joe Milton against Vanderbilt this past year, he becomes one of them. Joe Milton had never thrown, ever, 300 yards in a Tennessee uniform. He did so.
I heard Austin Price mention that once. Hey, Hubbard, did you ever hear AP mention that?
I heard that story
a time or two. Joe Milton did that in the first half in his final regular season game in a Tennessee uniform. Touchdown passes of 56, 10, 34, 46 yards to Ramel Keaton, McCowan Castles, Jacob Warren. Had a really good write-up about this. I'm reading word for word here. Really good game from Joe Milton. Obviously, the competition was not great, but
They were really, really bad is what they were, Eric. It wasn't not great. They were horrible. It was terrible.
Let's not forget maybe the last play of the Joe Milton era towards the end of that game before he got pulled. He runs for a touchdown, kind of somersaults in the checkerboard, gets up, crowns himself. And I think that was it.
he absolutely did.
There's a great picture of him crowning himself too.
Why not?
I'll tell you Joe Milton's best play, maybe his best play of this past season, was the touchdown pass to Castles at the end of the first half at Alabama.
Beautiful.
That maybe now he missed Jacob Warren earlier, but he made a play to Castles at the end that when they made that play, you thought, you know what, they might be able to win this thing down here. Because that was his patience, his touch, for all the things that Joe Milton we questioned and wondered about. He put it all together in the face of pressure right there on an all-out blitz to end the first half.
He made a really great throw to Squirrel White to get the party started. But that throw you're talking about, I mean, yeah, the touch, that was, I'm with you. I think that was his best throw of the season. The throw to Squirrel looked, more impressive, but I think just the touch, the patience, throwing the ball to where the receiver needed to be and allowing it to get a touchdown there right before the half. I thought that was huge.
Yeah, it was tremendous. I mean, again, great play call. Tennessee knew exactly what was coming. They told you, but Joe's execution on that one was fantastic. Fantastic.
Let's shift gears now to basketball, shall we? And I know that it's really just kind of pick your Dalton Connect moment. I recognize that. Pick your big win over Alabama, over Kentucky, in the NCAA tournament over Creighton. Whatever the case may be. But Rob, we'll start with you. What were some of those firework moments that first register when you think about this team from 23 to 24 this past basketball season?
Man, I don't know about you. I mean, I know we had seen him, do some things for sure. I mean, the Michigan State fireworks, but I don't really know that I accepted for sure what we had on our hands until he put 37 on North Carolina in a losing effort. I don't maybe 20 plus in the second half. And again, I mean, I knew he was good. But me stress. I mean, I knew he was good, probably an all SEC player by that point in time, better than expected for sure. But until he, went off in the Dean Dome that night, I don't think, I mean, that night I legit thought, I mean, first team All-American is a serious possibility. SEC player of the year is a serious possibility. NBA, for all that stuff was real. But that's probably the moment where it really, just how good he really was hit home for me.
I was trying to think of all the Dalton Connect moments, and honestly, that one didn't even come to mind. And I think that's a credit to all the insanity that the dude did for the entire season. Like that 39 he had against Florida, The way he took that game over, that was a January game. There was about a foot of snow in Knoxville. There's like 5,000 people in the gym, and he just went off. Like that's one of the most single dominant performances I think I've ever seen. And to take nothing away from what he did against at North Carolina and that level of competition and doing it on the road like he did, that was obviously earlier in the season in November. The 40 he had on Senior Day against Kentucky, obviously it's not a very good memory for a lot of Tennessee fans because they lost that game. The 39 he had in the second half against Auburn, because of the way he had 39, he had 20 something in the second half. He had so many second halves where he had 20 or more points. But the way he did it, I mean, there were points in times where Auburn had three guys kind of in his area paying attention to him. And there was times where he pulled up from deep and then Broom on the next possession wanted to step out and guard him. And he just went around Broom and finished with that two-hand dunk where he swings on the rim a little bit. Like those were such huge moments. He hits fall down fadeaway jumpers with a hand in his face. It was like the bigger the moment, the tougher the shot, the more he rose to the occasion and the more he was dominant. Some non-Dalton Connect moments or less focused on Dalton Connect. That 18-0 run against Creighton to send them to the Elite Eight, that changed that game. That won them that game. Creighton got back within 3 and Tennessee fought it off. But it felt like when you looked at the bracket when it first came out, you felt like Creighton was going to be there. And if Tennessee was going to get to the Elite Eight, they're going to have to go through Creighton to get there. And the way they played against Texas, and it was very sluggish, and they couldn't buy a bucket, and it was like, oh no, here we go again. Is this happening? The offense is going to go away, and they're going to get sent home too early from this thing. But for them to win that game and then to go on that 18-0 run against Creighton, and it wasn't all Dalton Connect. Like there was a lot of Josiah Jordan-James hitting big shots there. It was transition stuff. That was a huge season-defining moment. Jemai Meshack jumping the passing lane at Alabama and going out on the scores table, you know what I'm talking about, and intercepting that pass and saving it to Zakai, and it turns into a three-point play. That was a game I really 0% chance I thought Tennessee was going to win that game because Alabama's good, and it's really hard to win down there. So for them to go down there and win that game, that was huge. Scoring 103 at Rupp with Dalton Connect scoring 16. I mean, that was a Zakai Ziegler, 26 points, Josiah Jordan-James, 26 points. To put that number on the board at Rupp, obviously that was an awful defensive team Kentucky had, but to put 103 on the board in Rupp and you're only getting 16 from your first-round pick in the NBA draft, that's a huge kind of firework moment for me for sure.
I don't know if it's overlooked about Dalton, but I mean, because we all remember what he did to Auburn in the second half because of the import of that game for seeding in SEC. But man, he helped. Tennessee has 3 horrible, in my opinion, embarrassing losses at Georgia, at Missouri, and at Vanderbilt. And Dalton just wouldn't let it happen. I mean, I don't know what his numbers were in the second half, but they're some of the sickest that he had all season. And I mean, you lose those 3 games, or you lose 2 of those 3 games, and you're not the SEC regular season champion. You're not where you're not seated where you are. And I mean, we could talk about, we could just do a podcast on Dalton Connect moments, but you can't say enough about him with what he is. And I would add one just before we get Zakai coming back from the knee and playing at not only the level he was, but better than he was before. I mean, I wouldn't necessarily say that was a surprise, knowing him and how he works and everything, but that still was something that had to happen if this team was going to be an SEC champion. And I thought his successful return to be better than he was before after that kind of injury was a very big deal for this team.
Yeah, I thought his play at Rupp Arena was a firework moment. I think that's the best he's played in his Tennessee career offense. To play 40 minutes in that game at that pace, to not turn the basketball over and to score the way he did, I thought that was a huge night for him and Rupp Arena, and a huge win. And I know we're about out of time here. And you mentioned that we could do a podcast, Rob. I think it's a great poll question. What was Dalton Connect's best second half of basketball this year? I mean, now, I know you're going to put qualifiers on importance here, significance here, but I mean, is it at Mississippi State? Is it at Georgia? Is it Auburn? Is it Florida? Is it Chapel Hill? Like, when you look at him, and to me, for so much about him, it's all that second half. It's that final 20 minutes where he just took games over that I think as time goes on, you'll get a greater appreciation for. You know, I mean, he had some, I wouldn't say stinker first halves, but he had some first halves where you're like, oh, he just doesn't have it tonight. And then all of a sudden, you know, he goes in the phone booth and puts on his Superman cape, and it comes out. It's like, okay, I'm going to carry you here. And he did it. He didn't do it twice, Grant. He didn't do it once. He did it like a half dozen times or better in the second half for this team. It's pretty crazy. I don't know that we've seen a guy ever do that in the second half the way he did.
For me, it's the second half against Auburn, because there was a point where Auburn was up like 8 or something like that, and I thought they're going to mess around and lose this game, and we're never going to hear the end of it because it's Bruce coming to Knoxville and winning a game that he shouldn't win, beating a team that's better than their team, all this stuff, and Dalton turned it around. Like the smartest I have ever looked in my life. I was talking to a scout at halftime of that game, an Oklahoma City Thunder scout. And I said, you just need to hang out and watch the second half, because there's something about this dude. He loves the second half. And it was far from the first time that he had gone off in the second half. But it was, to me, the most impressive way that he went off in the second half in terms of where he was hitting shots at all levels, driving to the rim, hitting insanely tough mid-range jump shots, hitting deep threes when they had to have threes. Just the way he took over, that was one of the most impressive stretches of basketball I've ever seen, given the moment, given the circumstance, given everything that was on the line at that point in the season. Like, North Carolina's crazy impressive, Florida's crazy impressive, Mississippi State, Georgia. But that Auburn game meant more at that moment in the season at home. You had to have it. And he stepped up to the plate and delivered.
Rob, is it fair to say that's the one? And then it's probably not. But to me, that felt like the game where Rick Barnes, more than any other game, ran everything through him for about 8 minutes. I mean, I think he scored something like 15 in a row or some ridiculous number like that. But it was like everything in the second half was not within the framework or the flow of the offense. It was literally, this is Dalton Connect running the offense. Y'all can get out of the way, or he had a huge assist to Ziegler in that stretch, because I looked it up the other night. But to me, that was the one game where I thought, he's playing this straight up like an NBA game. Just your best player against anybody you want to bring at him, and we're going to move him to different spots, but it is going completely through him. It's his call to do whatever he wants to do with the basketball.
Yeah, Grant, I'm sure I'm misremembering, but I don't think that's the first time Rick ever put it in his hands, like on the inbounds, out of bounds, after a made field goal or whatever, the backcourt. But I think it's the first time he did it for 6, 7, 8 possessions in a row, like you're talking about, Hubbard, and just, came down and ran some action at the top of the key to get something going. And again, that kind of stuff, what you're talking about, where not just finding him the half court, but giving it to him, inbounding the ball to him or finding him after a defensive rebound. To me, that what you're talking about, that last stretch, that's the first time I remember it being, that widespread or whatever. I'm not saying it's the first time Dalton ever took the ball in bounds and went down the court, but yeah, it was. I mean, he was just a dude. I mean, we're not. Me and Grant are both said it about. We're not going to see it. We're not going to see it again. I mean, not just the JUCO to small school to SEC success story. I mean, just a guy that comes in and dominates like this kid, like we're talking about right now. Maybe I'm wrong. I hope I'm wrong, but I don't think we'll see it.
There were 2 possessions, and I'm pretty sure it was back-to-back, where he hits a deep three, and Janai Broome, who had been going off that game, a really, really good player, one of the best centers in the SEC, he got pissed off that nobody was stopping Dalton, and he basically said, I'm going to take him next possession down. And they switched to get Broome on him on the perimeter, and that was the possession where Dalton kind of fakes the pull-up and just goes around him and drives straight to the rim and dunks it. Like that. That's really like – that's just at such a different level. Like, it's hard to even explain like how good that is, how elite that is to treat somebody like John Broome like that, a really, really good basketball player. And Dalton Connect looked like an NBA player. I mean, there was a practice in March, and it didn't really mean anything because the next game was the Mississippi State SEC tournament game. But we watched practice, and I promise you, if Dalton, and it was a lot of 5-on-5, and it's a lot of Jemai Mashak on Dalton Connect, obviously they're going to play defense in those situations. If Dalton shot it 30 times, I promise you he hit 28. It was the most absurd 90 minutes I've ever seen. Like, it was like there was a magnet on the ball to the basket. Like, he could not miss if he was trying to miss. And when practice was over, he just sat down on the bench like nothing had happened. It was just another day at the office. Like, that's how much at a different level he was. Yeah, and the sad part was you were watching that season play out thinking just enjoy it while it lasts because this guy's not coming back around anytime soon.
And unfortunately, he's too old to play in the NBA as a rookie.
As we kind of end this conversation and say goodbye, Brent, you've been covering Tennessee athletics for a while.
Oh, here we go. Grant Ramey, insert joke now.
Nope.
Platter, Grant. Come on, take it now. I mean, I've got some guesses on some of the years, obviously, but, from August to the end of June, when was the last time you remember Tennessee athletics across the board just being this good, this much star power, this much fun, this much engaging? It's been a really good year, is what I'm trying to say. It's been a really, really good year for Tennessee athletics, and we kind of look forward to the new year now. But this 2023 to 24 was pretty spectacular.
Yeah, I don't know that I've covered one like this. And the crazy part about it is football went 8-4.
Yeah,
I mean, and you can go back. I mean, I looked the number up. I mean, baseball was 500 the year Tennessee won the national title in football. They were 28-28 was their record. The 95 season was a really fun season. Baseball went to the College World Series. Football beats Alabama, but they lost again to Florida, right? And it was just, okay. Basketball in 95, no. There was nothing spectacular about that brand of basketball at any point in time going on there. So, I mean, when you're talking about two of your big three won regular season championships, and one of them won every tournament they played in, including the national championship tournament in baseball. You finally, you broke through and got to the Elite Eight. Rob, what was that? Their third appearance in the Elite Eight? Second appearance?
Second.
I mean, that doesn't happen all the time. So I mean, I don't know. I don't know that you can say that there's another one like this. There were times Tennessee went to the SEC championship game, but they didn't win it. I mean, I guess in '97 they won the SEC championship game in football. And I think that basketball team went to the NCAA tournament, which was a big deal, wasn't that? I think that was Jerry Green's first year in '97, and they lost in an 8-9 game. But I mean, they weren't a top 5 team all year long. You know what I mean?
No,
Rick Barnes was talked about as a Final Four. I mean, they lost a Final Four game, is what they lost to Purdue in the regional championship. I don't know that you can find another year, Rob.
There was, I mean, I'm not gonna say these were as good. 05, 07 when they made Atlanta in football. I mean, Bruce had some pretty good basketball teams, but not in this level. And baseball wasn't. I mean, it's just the answer is no. But I'm just trying to, there might be some that were sort of close. But
yeah, I mean,
neither of those.
If you're a football only guy, or football's on a much higher pedestal for you, then you might pick a year like that, Rob, because football went to a championship game, they won their division, and you don't put the baseball qualifier in the same spot as some other people did.
Yeah,
from that standpoint.
But neither of those 05 or 07 football teams were great. I mean, they kind of snuck into Atlanta. It wasn't like they just rode herd on the SEC East and went down there as heavy. In fact, they were big underdogs in both those games. I think it's Auburn and LSU.
Yep.
Eric, you want me to answer the question for you?
Yeah.
For Hubs, on behalf of Hubs.
Thanks.
Basketball won almost 70% of its games. Baseball won almost 80% of its games. And football went undefeated in the regular season, unscored upon. 1939. Hubs was a spry 19-year-old with a fedora and his credential sticking out of the fedora on the train.
He was taking notes on a stone tablet.
He was calling back to Knoxville on a payphone, reading off his story, putting in the stops in between every sentence, all that stuff. 1939, that's the answer.
Riding a train, sending stuff back on teletype, baby. That was me.
Right.
It's been a good year. It's been a really, really good year for Tennessee athletics, of course, ending in a national championship, the first in program history for the baseball team, Elite Eight for basketball. Football, okay, but finishing on a good note with kind of the quote-unquote team of next year with Nico and Dylan Sampson, James Pearson more, a Citrus Bowl win in dominant fashion, 35-0 over Iowa. Hopefully this upcoming year is going to be filled with as many fireworks as this past year for Tennessee athletics. It's been fun. Appreciate you guys for joining us here in this conversation. We'll have the up to the minute latest information on Tony Vitello and a contract extension when that becomes knowledge to us. So stay tuned to Volquest.com, the Journal's Quarters. If you're watching on YouTube right now, put in this promo code, and you're going to get a good deal to join us over here on Volquest.com. $1 for 2 months. $1 for 2 months, a special offer. If you're watching on YouTube right now, put in that promo code. Things are about to heat up. It feels like things have not stopped. Recruiting is at a rapid pace right now. Tennessee football recruiting just continues to get guys. Of course, baseball season just ended, but transfer portal's now here. Football camp's going to start later this month. Tennessee will be playing football games next month, if you can believe that. So all that and more is over at Volquest.com. For Brent Hubbs, Grant Ramey, Rob Lewis, I'm Eric Kane. A big thank you, as always, to our friends, Exterior Home Solutions. That phone number is 865-524-5888, or visit them online at exteriorhomesolutions.com. We'll be back on Thursday for the mailbag portion of the show right here on the Volquest Podcast.